Welcome, everybody. I think this is to have this panel in this space is a perfect example, a manifestation, I think, of the ecosystem of what it means to be an art collector. Loft Projects has done this incredible curation. At Leslie and Charlotte, who wear multiple hats in the art world, sort of embody that ecosystem in themselves as artists themselves, as dealers, and as advocates for artists. So I'm so happy to be able to explore what this ecosystem looks like. And I'd love to start with just a very simple question. What role does art play in your lives? Why is it so important for this ecosystem to be fostered? I think that's my very simple but very broad and probably philosophical question. And maybe and maybe define sort of who you are in the context of, what are those hats that you are wearing within the art world?
Hi, I'm Charlotte Hailstone. I'm an artist, I'm a curator, collector, doing it all. But I would say art for me, being an artist, is just very important to surround yourself with. I think it brings you joy. I think it's very therapeutic. I think it's just also a really important marker of history and time, and that's why I think emerging artists specifically are so important to support right now, so that way we keep the culture kind of going. That's my very short answer to that
it could go very long, so I appreciate you keeping it short.
Hi, I'm Elena from PLATO Gallery. I'm a gallerist, which means I am a curator, a collector, a marketer, a salesperson, an art handler, an art advisor, a social media person, and everything, an influencer, and everything in between. And that tells you that art plays an intrinsic part in my life and in lives of most people who surround me on a daily basis. And I feel like it's, with all these hats that you wear, it's lots of ups and downs and lots of different tasks and lots of people around you. But every day you're reminded that art is important. At a place like this, every day you come here and you see the eyes of people looking at what you put in the booth and what you spent weeks and weeks preparing for. And then some of them will put it up in their houses, and maybe their children and grandchildren will enjoy it. And the artists will get paid, and the fair will keep going. Art is important. That's about it. Art is everything.
I think I have this.
Oh, here you go.
One more. Hi, Leslie Weissman, and a little bit about what my background is also as an artist. And then about 25 years ago, started collecting with my husband, which grew into collecting with our children and their significant others. So we have had a long history of collecting and of myself painting. About 10 years ago, I started some nonprofit artist collectives to help support emerging artists that might not have otherwise had the ability to get their work out into the world. I think everybody has a message that they feel so passionately about, and I think our family collection philosophy is that artists are pictorial historians, and it is so important to see the story and the narrative that they're telling us, and their ability to do that is dependent on our ability then as curators, advisors, dealers, to bring their work to the forefront, not only in our own personal collection, to make sure that work then gets shared in museum shows, that we're able to put on events like this where we can showcase artists and help them find a permanent gallery home so that they can grow their practice. So I think I love being able to foster that relationship between artists and gallerists and helping promote artists and get them into the ecosystem in a way that they may have not otherwise had access to, just working and toiling away in their studios. So I think that's a really intrinsic part. I also have the privilege of being able to sit on a few art industry boards where I'm able to do the same things on museums that really focus on bringing, again, early mid-career artists to the forefront of geographies that are not New York or LA based, as well as residencies, and giving artists an opportunity to have that month of time just to explore their practice. So I really like to keep my hands in a little bit of everything, and thanks to my colleague Charlotte, I'm able to actually stay on task. So we've had a very successful partnership in that regard.
Hello, my name is Vyczie Dorado, visual artist based in New York. I currently do art full-time and mostly just like on the back end of things in the art world, art handling for Independent this year and last year and the year before and the year before, and photographing my own work, networking my own stuff, just kind of like everything an assistant would do, but once you get bigger, you can hire an assistant, but I'm not there yet. And I am on the daily dealing with what you mentioned. How can I represent visually a moment? And sometimes it's very like, oh, we know what an image is. Like, we have these associations with it. I know like what she's referring to. Like, if I use like the boring ape, we know that era that happened. But how do I represent when cold water hits somebody's back? What color is that? And that's my day-to-day.
Where can we find your work?
I am currently at booth R8, where I represent the feeling of hope, and you'll figure out which piece it is.
Thank you. Thank you. As we are in the Loft Projects curation, in the context of it, I would love, particularly Leslie and Charlotte, how does your role as an artist reinforce or inform the way that you are able to work with the artists that you work with? And also sort of vice versa, how does being a collector and a dealer reinforce or contradict or support or whatever it happens to be your role as an artist, or your process as an artist, or thinking of yourself as an artist?
Can you go first? Sure. I think for me, one of the things that I'm able to bring to bear, having collected and worked with early career artists, again, one of the things that I know about having a studio practice for all these years, as well as collecting, being able to talk to artists about how do you appropriately package your work? How do you present it? How do you interface with a brick and mortar gallery when you go to an opening? Things to do and not do in terms of interacting at an opening that might not be of your work, but being able to say to a gallerist after a show, I really enjoyed coming to the opening of such and such. This is my takeaway. So having sort of a purposeful engagement in the beginning of a conversation, not necessarily making it about you and your practice, but how the entire system works, so that the gallerist understands that you are focused on more than just yourself, that you are part of a whole community of people. I think another thing, having been doing the collecting, the advising, and my own studio for such a long time, is being able to work with artists on pricing, which I think is a really critical piece, and maybe Elena would want to speak to this at some point, because often artists will sell out of their studios, and when we sell out of our studios, you're often selling to friends and friends of friends. They're often inclined to pay a higher price for a work, and then on one hand is a very lovely concept. On the other hand, it can hurt your market going forward once you get into a gallery environment, because because you are not necessarily, you're new to that gallery, you haven't been out so much on a public wall yet, and the gallery needs to be able to price the work accordingly, and if the prices get too high, and we've read a lot about that recently in auction results and how people mark things to the market that might be artificial. So just being aware of all those kinds of pitfalls about what does the auction market do to a price, how does a gallerist look for your pricing. So I think those are some of the key things that I help at least try and make artists aware. I will never actually say to an artist, price a work at such and such, but just kind of give them comps and galleries to look at and things like that. So I think those are some of the key things, as well as making sure things are archival, packed up appropriately.
Yeah, it's great advice.
I feel like my art practice and curatorial side have actually kind of merged into one, and that has been a really special experience that I've kind of experienced in the past year, really developing this curatorial practice with Loft Projects. I think being an artist and interacting with artists every day on I call it the back end side, the curatorial side, I just think it's just so special to me because I get to interact with artists on a very different level now. Originally, I would go to artist studios and we would mainly talk just about kind of what they're working on, the process that they use, the physicality of the piece. But now I get to dive a little bit deeper into kind of seeing like what other artists' career goals are, kind of where they want to be placed, what context do they want to be put in. And I get to learn so much from the artists as well. So I love being an artist on this side. I think it's so much fun, and I feel it's just so exciting to interact with so many artists. I mean, we had 33 artists in this show, which is insane. And every single one of them, me or Leslie, we know personally. And so we really get that face-to-face time. And I feel like we get to really work together with the artists, and it becomes a very collaborative experience as well.
I mean, let's talk about that because, we're here talking about the art ecosystem. The secondary market, the, old masters market, whatever it is that is dealing with artists who have already died. That's a very essential piece of the ecosystem that's missing. So, working with emerging artists would be interesting to talk about. Why is that so enriching? Why is it so enriching in your case as an artist? Why is it so enriching to be able to have those relationships? What is the reciprocity that happens between collector and artist, and how does it flow both ways? I think sometimes when we talk about emerging artists, we think of I'll buy from an emerging artist because I want to sort of support this ecosystem, but we don't realize how much it gives back to us. And you realize that once you start collecting, you understand that it's like such a important, whether it's just, I think of it as balance. Why, Elena, why are you dealing with artists who are living? Why aren't you an old masters dealer?
That's a very good question. Maybe in the short term, being an old master dealer would have been much more profitable and less work, and less stressful because you don't deal with them, right? You just deal with objects. You don't deal with people. However, I find it incredibly rewarding to deal with people, right? And being able to help my contemporaries and their families and their network. It's emotionally, it takes a huge toll, but then it also gives back immediately. I'll give you an example from my personal experience in terms of how a collector can influence a living artist and his whole ecosystem and life situation directly. There was a situation when I placed a painting by a living artist into someone's collection. They were very excited about it. And it turned out that the artist's studio had burned just recently. And that significant purchase really helped them continue and rebuild and just have psychological stability to move forward. I didn't realize that in the moment. Months later, when he told me about that, I could share that with the collector, who was just excited to get a painting up on his wall, and had, didn't think about other fringe benefits of being part of a community. But every time you do that and you buy something for yourself, you might be actually changing somebody's life. Yeah. And that story stays with me, and there are many others similar to that, right? When it supports an artist's need, or somebody is maybe going through a tough period in terms of their inspiration, or something in their personal life is off, or maybe a relationship with the gallery is tough, and just knowing it's not always even financial. I can see how artists, just knowing that somebody wanted their work and they were excited about it, or maybe they came to the studio, they came to the opening, and it's going to, I don't know, London, Shanghai, LA, it really makes their day, and it gives them the second air.
Yeah.
Right? Even beyond the finances. So it really is a huge impact, and I can't do it for dead people.
To add to that, in a field where it's so competitive, you have to know the right people, networking. If you're not on top of it, this artist is dead, they're gone. But it's just you have to be so diligent as an artist in this field, or else you will lose momentum, and then you have to build it up again, and then you have to try again. To have fans, supporters, people that are excited to go to my shows, people that are excited to see things that I'm working on, it's so motivating. It's so motivating, because I was speaking with another artist about this. To be a full-time artist is scary. To be reliant on this for an income is scary, because you'll have periods where it's everyone's buying and then it's kind of dead for a little bit. Everybody takes a break. Everyone's buying again. So the things that keep you motivated is the constant check-ins, people that want to keep tabs on you, people that want to know what you're up to. Because there's a lot of artists that stop because they don't get a foundation of support that is just so crucial to continuing this practice. Whether or not your work is about community, it takes community to uplift your work.
Good. I'll add a little bit to that. I think one of the things that being a working artist and also a collector and a curator is exactly that, is knowing how validating it is when your work sells. And the thrill that I get when I know my work's going out into the world, I want to share that with another artist and get their work out into the world. There are literally times where I get teary-eyed when I call an artist to say, we just sold your work, and I get right onto Zelle and send the funds over to them. It gives me personally such a thrill, and is very fulfilling, because you know now that artist can buy more supplies, pay their rent, have dinner. Artists have a hard time insuring themselves. We learned that during the fires in LA. The artists weren't able to have insurance. They were self-insured. So a lot of them could not recoup lost materials, lost inventory, because the art is their inventory. So I think that, just to add on to those 2 points, it's really satisfying to be able to be part of somebody being able to make a living in the world.
And
I kind of just want to also go back to the ecosystem and why I feel like it's important for collectors to collect emerging artists. I think the benefits that come with that are, if you're in a secondary market and you're collecting at that level, that's already an established asset class. In this world, you actually get the chance to help create an asset class for an artist. And you personally, by supporting them, you have that power to actually push someone forward. And if you want to see, I know that we as artists sometimes feel weird about our art being an investment, but it's kind of name of the game. And for that to happen, you need consistent collectors. And when you have that, you your purchase of the artist piece will go up in value, and everyone kind of benefits in the end as well.
Especially now, it's so, I know when I was a kid and I was looking to get into art, I was like, I'm not gonna, even in high school, I was like, I'm not gonna really pop off until I'm in my 50s. But it's really nice that we're in a time where collectors are taking a chance on emerging artists. And you see that more in the art that's entering the market. It's so refreshing to see the new ideas and techniques that people are bringing, because people are willing to invest in that. And also having some relationships with these new collectors and kind of having a new spin on that dynamic. I send all the collectors I know, they get a Christmas card. It's very nice to have that, because it's just yeah, I get to personally tell you, because of you, I got to eat this month. Because of you, I paid rent. That's big. That's huge. You're impacting my life in insane ways just by buying one work.
And to add to that, I know Leslie, you're always talking about collecting your peers, and I think that if you look at the work around us right now, there's something so special as a contemporary of a lot of these artists to be able to if art is a reflection, is a visual history of the time, to be able to have evidence of that history, and to support that history as it is happening. An old master painting is full of images and people and fashions that are totally foreign to us, and that's exciting in itself. But when you see, Clueless up here, one of my favorite movies from growing up, or a number of other ones. Tell me the name of this artist again.
Hailstone.
I mean, this is a visual record of, nostalgia and growing up and pop culture in America, and it's such a special thing for you to be able to participate in that as a collector. So I think it's really important to talk about what a satisfying thing it is to be a collector of emerging artists, because you feel like your world is being reflected back to you. Like when you read a passage in a book and you're like, oh my God, that makes sense to me. That's what it is to see, Cher up there, saying as if. Yeah, absolutely.
And also how, from a collector perspective, for Michael and I and our kids and their partners, we get to have really exciting relationships when we collect peers of our kids' ages and emerging artists. We get to spend time with the artists. Everybody has an open invitation to our house to come see their work in context with other artists that they know. And it's really exciting when they walk around the house and see their work. And there's an artist maybe that we started collecting 15, 20 years ago that a new artist is next to in our home, and get to see those works in the same context. They're really excited, they're proud, it gives them a sense of motivation, and they're really very much a part of our life. And we host brunches at the house about once or twice a month, and we'll bring a group of about 10 artists up, or someone will do a drop-in and kind of walk around, and we'll have some club soda and a sandwich and talk about art, and that's really nice. I think the one thing about art, and I was talking to a gallery owner yesterday who came to the fair, that art is both personal and professional. And sure, we could all look at it and say, well, you never get to step away, but it is such a unique industry, and it brings such warmth and joy, and it brings intellectual stimulation, that you really embrace the fact that it is all-encompassing. And I think that's what collecting your peers and getting involved with emerging artists is all about.
Right.
And again, when they see their work in context, to Charlotte's point, they know that investment in them will probably help build, as well as working with a gallery that invests in their artists, that takes their artists to art fairs, that helps get them into collectors' hands of the right caliber, gets them into museums or other group exhibitions. So also focusing on what a gallery looks for in an emerging artist is really important.
Right. I think that the number of people that can change the life. I mean, we've been talking a lot about the purchase after devastating fire, the single purchases that make a difference. But I think that we don't often recognize how much or how few people can actually change a career. I think a collector that champions art and has people come see it, a gallerist who's showing the work and believes in it in the long term, maybe a critic who writes about it, or a scholar. I think that that's also a very exciting thing about being part of the ecosystem, is that you can create the asset class, but I know that this moment in the art market is a very different one than it was, say 3 years ago. So I would love to talk about the state of the market, how to make sure that it is, stays healthy, and how to think about supporting it at this moment. So what are those ways that we can intervene and create a sustainable market in a moment of great uncertainty?
Pressure's on. I think we just do what we do, right? There's a lot to say about the change in the market and slowing down and the bubble bursting, could be bold. But at the same time, I feel like it's a very healthy moment right now. Almost every work I sell, I know it's going to somebody who is excited about it, who's not buying it to flip it, who's not buying it because they think that they can flip it one day and that's the only reason. They actually love the work and they believe in it, and it's an investment for them as well. I think it's a very cleansing moment, personally, as a dealer. And if we just continue holding on to that and building a relationship with these kind of people, we hopefully will never end up in a bubble. Bubbles come and go. We will at some point. But this is a moment to learn and a moment to grow these relationships and separate what is healthy for the art market and what should maybe not belong in here. And you also said something about influencing how the art or the moment is reflected in art. And I felt like it resonated with me a lot, because having an international program that focuses on intercultural dialogue globally, I'm realizing that I do it for people from around the world. Even in the booth here, down the street, it's R4, we have 7, 8 artists, and they're all from different parts of the world. There's somebody from Los Angeles with Indonesian roots, and he reflects the moment here and now. There's somebody from Canada who lives in the countryside and whose paintings look like the old masters, but we recognize their garb and their tattoos and their piercing and their clothing, and I see them walking around the Bowery by the gallery, and now they're in his paintings that look like the old masters, and that's very exciting. And somebody who is from Hungary, a country that's experiencing a very conservative political moment at the time, and he's reflecting that in the same booth, and they're all in the conversation. So I feel like it's very rewarding, and I don't think about it day to day, but you brought it up, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think how the art market is reflecting on a lot of people's practices at the moment, it's turbulent, but it is kind of it's much needed rest. With how much things were booming in 2020, I noticed quality for work. It was just at a different place. And where people are now, and other artists that I've spoken to, everyone's taking this as a moment of rest to really flesh out ideas, to experiment, try new things. I know for myself in my practice, I'm I can actually take the time to go into larger pieces and larger paintings, because before I was just doing smaller ones. And it wasn't to like crank things out, but it is nice to now have the time to really invest into one painting, because the turnaround before it was insane. Like I know people that tried making like over 20 works in like less than a year, and that's a lot. And at some point, unless it's like a series that you already really went into, it can be repetitive in symbolism, and it can lose a lot of the nuance in conversation. Now we can really allow ourselves to come into that environment.
Well, essentially, this moment makes the art better.
Exactly.
This is the time to buy art.
Incubation.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I think one of the other concepts right now is also building a new collector base, that we've taken that sort of setback where people were running haphazardly into booths at fairs and heard one kind of established collector saying they wanted this artist, and then everybody else glommed on and bought that artist. So a couple of things. One is considered purchases, calming down the acquisition in terms of actually thinking about it and acquiring a piece that makes sense and works. And then also talking to the next gen of collectors, right? You know, you've got collecting your peers, the new artists and the new collectors are in the same category, and addressing those. And Elena, I don't know if you've seen this, but younger collectors, a generation of people that grew up having Robinhood accounts and Coinbase accounts and investing differently and having that instant gratification and being able to see things on TikTok and that sense of influencing in conjunction with different payment options. You know, collectors used to walk in and they would write a check, and then they started wiring, and now they're doing Zelle. And then new collectors are used to things like Afterpay and Klarna and not actually having to pay for everything all at once, so that they can budget out and make multiple acquisitions, knowing that they can maybe buy 4 works because they're making the payments over a few months. So I think also galleries adapting, and for our project, Charlotte and I tend to do salon style. There's a reason why. Salon style, smaller works. A lot of people are now staying in cities and in apartments and in smaller homes. The McMansions are disappearing. And there are absolutely beautiful, important works that are not sized for an institution. So I think just also both from collector, gallerist, and artist perspective, finding a new meeting place that fits better in 2025. I know Charlotte wants to add to that.
Yeah, I think getting new collectors is kind of always the answer to everything. Obviously, more collectors, more money. We love that. But I think educating younger collectors, like what you do, Hall, I think is amazing. You teach women to collect women emerging artists. I also think market turns can be kind of interesting and almost fun in a sense for artists, kind of riffing off what you were speaking of. I think this also might be a moment in time in history that artists start taking their market more into their own hands and kind of controlling their career a little bit more. I think if there isn't always the support from a ton of emerging galleries because the market is so tough, I think it'll be really interesting to look back in a few years and see what these times produce, especially with how prominent social media, TikTok, Instagram, everything is, and how things will get pushed forward in the future. I think is pretty. I actually think it's something to look forward to.
Yeah. And I know, just to back everything that you're saying up with data, the UBS Art Basel report had an analysis of the art market, and it showed that there's actually, yes, the market is down overall, but the number of transactions are up. So that means that there are lower transactions, but more people buying at that lower rate. So and more people coming in at that sort of lower level. So in fact, the emerging market is very strong and very exciting. I think and clearly very strong in the content that it's producing as well. maybe that's a very optimistic note to sort of end on, and maybe we can open it up to a couple questions if anyone has them, or if not, we can enjoy some espresso from Cafe Aroma.
We kind of briefly touched on the topic of things that you feel like emerging level galleries are looking for out of emerging level artists. And interested in your taste and programs. What are you looking for in your artists aside from like strong art?
So I don't know if everybody heard the question was, what is it that emerging galleries look for in emerging artists, right? What can you do to get on board? I'm maybe not the most qualified person to answer that question because even though the gallery is a little over a year old, a lot of artists in our program are beyond emerging, right? They probably are in a career or they have shown before. And because my background, I've worked as a director at many other galleries and as an advisor. My network of artists is a little, most of them are not early career, very early career, but some are. And actually, I'm opening a show on May 20th with somebody who's in their very early 20s, right? And she's emerging. It's her first solo exhibition in New York. But the work is beyond emerging. So I guess what I'm looking for, I can only answer for myself, is a very defined message or style, or an artist who has formed, at least at that stage in their life, to an extent that they have something unique to say in a unique way. I think it's rare, and it's a very important factor for me. And also, focusing on intercultural dialogue, I think identity is important, ideas for me are important. And I think connoisseurship is a big deal in the art world, and it always will be. So a certain degree of understanding your craft, knowing how to paint, sculpt, draw, and having had experience with that, when your hand is strong, right? It's important to me personally. Not to every emerging gallery though. So thank you. Yeah, great question. Question.
Any more questions?
I think everyone wants espresso. Well, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you so much.
And enjoy some coffee. Let's mingle and talk about the art.